After my daughter tried to put me in a nursing home, I disappeared to a small town 3,000 miles away. She built an empire on my forged signatures and threw a party to celebrate stealing my life. At that party, the truth came out about the forgeries, about the inheritance, everything. At 2:47 a.m., I received 42 missed calls from her. Hello everyone, welcome. Those 42 missed calls, just the beginning. Quick question. Honestly, if your family betrayed you like this, would you answer? Share your thoughts in the comments. Note, this is fictional storytelling, exploring real themes about family boundaries and consequences. Now let's explain how Gregory got here. The phone started vibrating at 2:47 a.m. I didn't reach for it. I simply opened my eyes in the darkness and watched the screen illuminate the ceiling in rhythmic pulses. Blue light. Darkness. Blue light. Darkness. 1. The name glowed, Melissa Mobile. I let it ring through to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it started again. 2. Outside my window, the Atlantic whispered against the rocky Maine coast. Inside my phone danced across the nightstand with increasing urgency. 3. 4. 5. I sat up slowly, the hardwood floor cold beneath my feet. I didn't turn on the lamp. Instead, I watched the phone perform its frantic ritual, counting each call with methodical precision. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. There was a time when I would have answered on the first ring, when my daughter's voice, no matter the hour, would have sent me scrambling with my heart hammering. When Melissa Mobile meant emergency crisis need. When being her father meant being available. Always. 11, 12, 13. But that was 3 years ago. A different life. A different man. 14, 15, 16. I walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. The moon hung low over the water, painting silver across the waves. Camden slept peacefully around me, this small coastal town that had become my refuge. 17, 18, 19, 20. The vibrations came faster now, barely stopping before starting again. I imagined her in Seattle, in that house, my house, pacing, redialing, desperate. 21, 22, 23. Text messages started appearing. Dad, please, answer the phone. It's an emergency. Dad, I'm begging you. I stood at the window and counted. The discipline of numbers had always calmed me. In my old life, I had built a career on numbers. Revenue projections, growth percentages, return on investment. Now I counted phone calls from my only child. 24, 25, 26, 27. More texts. They're going to take everything. Please, Dad. I know you're awake. 28, 29, 30. I thought about the last real conversation. The one where I'd looked into my daughter's eyes and seen something I'd never seen before. The absence of my daughter looking back. 31, 32, 33. My phone's battery was dropping rapidly. Soon the sun would rise over the Atlantic, painting the sky in shades that still took my breath away every morning. 34, 35, 36. Another text. I'll lose the house. The house. Always the house. The 3-story brownstone in Seattle that my father had bought in 1962, where I'd grown up, married, raised Melissa alone after Caroline died. Every wall held memories no amount of paint could cover. The house that Melissa and Trevor had convinced me to sign over, for estate planning purposes, Dad, to protect your assets. 37, 38, 39. I could feel the weight of what was coming. I'd known for months. Since Catherine Walsh's carefully worded phone call in October, since the investigation had quietly begun, since the pieces started falling into place, I'd known this moment would arrive. 40. 41. The vibration stopped. For 10 seconds, maybe 15, silence. I counted the seconds the same way I'd counted the calls. Then it started again. 42. This time I picked up the phone. Not to answer. Just to look at it, feel its weight, see my daughter's name glowing in the darkness. The vibration stopped. I waited, but there was no 43rd call. Just a final text. Dad, I'm sorry for everything. Please help us. I don't know what else to do. 42 calls. The same number of years Melissa had lived, when she and Trevor had orchestrated my removal from my own life. When she'd sat across from me at that attorney's office and told me with Trevor's hand on her shoulder that it would be better for everyone if I went to Pinehurst Assisted Living. You're getting older, Dad. Let us take care of things now. I set the phone face down and returned to the window. The sky was lightening at the edges, that deep blue of pre-dawn giving way to something softer. Somewhere below, I heard the coffee maker gurgling to life. I knew what Melissa wanted. I'd known for months that this day would come, known from the moment Catherine told me about the investigation, about Trevor's schemes, about the house mortgaged to the breaking point, about the debt collectors and foreclosure notices. I'd known and I'd waited, but before you can understand why I stood there in the darkness, counting my daughter's desperate calls without answering, before you can understand the 42 rings that marked the end of one story and the beginning of another, you need to understand how we got here. You need to understand what happened 3 years ago when I stopped being Gregory Callahan's successful business consultant and devoted father and became something else entirely. You need to understand the day I signed away my life. 3 years ago, I had everything. That's what I thought, standing in the conference room of Callahan Consulting on a bright October morning in 2021. Sunlight streamed through the windows of our Capitol Hill office, illuminating the mahogany table where I'd closed hundreds of deals over 38 years. Melissa sat across from me, radiant in a navy blazer that reminded me of her mother. Beside her, Trevor adjusted his tie with practiced smoothness. Young, ambitious Harvard MBA. Everything a father could want for his daughter. Everything I'd been blind enough to believe. Dad, this is incredible, Melissa said, eyes bright as she looked at the transition documents. You built something amazing. I felt pride swell in my chest. 40 clients' annual revenue of $2.3 million, a reputation built over decades. At 62, I was ready to step back. Let the next generation take the reins. Your mother would be proud, I said, watching Melissa's eyes glisten. Caroline had been gone 12 years, but her absence lived in every corner of our lives. She always said you'd surpass me. Trevor leaned forward. We've been reviewing the structure, real growth potential. We could expand into tech, maybe open a satellite office in San Francisco. I listened to their vision, feeling that peculiar mix of pride and melancholy that comes with letting go. This company had been my life's work, but Melissa was my world. We signed the papers that afternoon. I became senior advisor, a title that sounded distinguished, but meant very little. They would handle operations. I would golf, more travel, finally read those books, gathering dust. The first month was wonderful. They consulted me, asked my opinion, made me feel valued. Trevor even took me to Mariners games. Then things began to shift. Dad, we're worried about you, Melissa said one evening in late November. We were having dinner at the house, my house, though she'd started saying our house instead. Worried about what? She exchanged a glance with Trevor. That look, I'd remember it later as the first visible crack. Your memory. You've been forgetting things. I set down my fork. What things? Last Tuesday. We had dinner planned. You never showed up. I searched my memory, found nothing. No dinner plans. No conversation about Tuesday. But Melissa's face was so earnest that doubt crept in like cold water. I don't remember planning that. That's exactly what worries us, Trevor said gently. Over the next weeks, incidents multiplied. A doctor's appointment I'd supposedly missed. Keys found in strange places, the refrigerator, the mailbox, though I had no memory of putting them there. Maybe you should see someone, Melissa suggested. So I went. Dr. Sarah Martinez ran tests, asked questions, nodded sympathetically. When the results came back, they were normal. Your cognitive function is excellent for your age, Mr. Callahan. I see no signs of dementia or memory impairment. Relief flooded through me. I wasn't losing my mind. But Melissa seemed almost disappointed when I told her. Maybe you should get a second opinion, Dad. The legal papers appeared in January 2022. Trevor brought them on a Saturday morning, his expression grave. Melissa was running errands. The papers were in a thick manila folder, conservatorship documents, power of attorney, asset protection trusts. This seems excessive, I said. I'm 62, not 90. Better to be prepared, with your memory issues. The doctor said I'm fine. Dad. Trevor pointed to the bottom of each page. You signed these documents last month. Don't you remember? I stared at the papers. There at the bottom was my signature. Slightly shaky, but unmistakably mine. Dated December 15th, 2021. But I had no memory of signing anything. I didn't. Trevor's hand on my shoulder felt heavy. This is exactly what we're talking about. You're forgetting significant things. My mind spun. The signatures looked real, but how could I have forgotten something so important? Let me call Catherine, I said. Catherine Walsh, my attorney of 20 years. Catherine, retired dad, moved to Florida last fall, remember? I didn't remember that either. When I called her office, a recorded message confirmed she'd closed her practice. Everything was slipping away, and I couldn't understand how. February brought the real blow. I came home from a morning walk to find Melissa and Trevor with two strangers in business attire. Dad, we need to talk, Melissa said, voice soft, but eyes hard. We found irregularities in the house title. Liens we didn't know about, tax issues. What liens? The house is paid off. The man stepped forward. Mr. Callahan, I'm David Park from Secure Estate Management. There are documents that need your immediate attention. More papers, more signatures. My head pounded. We need to transfer the house into a trust, Trevor explained, to protect it from creditors. Just temporarily. What creditors? I don't have any debt. Melissa's eyes filled with tears. Dad, you've been making concerning financial decisions. Receipts for things you don't remember, buying checks to people we can't identify. I looked at the papers. Transfer of deed. Quit claim. I need time to think. We don't have time. Trevor's voice had an edge now. If we don't act, you could lose everything. I signed. They were my family. They said they were protecting me. And the evidence, those signatures, those missed appointments, it all pointed to one terrible conclusion. I was losing my mind. The worst came in March. Dad, we've found a wonderful place for you, Melissa said. We were in the kitchen, their kitchen now. Pinehurst Assisted Living. Beautiful, right on Lake Washington. I don't need assisted living. Dad. Trevor's hand landed on the table. You left the stove on yesterday. Burned a pot completely through. You could have burned down the house. I had no memory of that either. Just temporarily, Melissa said, until we get your health stabilized. But I saw the truth in her eyes. There would be no coming home. I moved to Pinehurst on April 3rd, 2022. Most of my life fit into 6 boxes and 2 suitcases. As Trevor drove me away from Capitol Hill, I turned to look back. The house where Carolyn and I had brought Melissa home from the hospital. Where I'd read her bedtime stories and taught her to ride a bike. The house that no longer belonged to me. I realized it too late my daughter was stealing my life one forged signature at a time. Pinehurst assisted living smelled like industrial cleaning solution and defeat. The scent hit me the moment I stepped through the automatic doors on April 3rd, 2022, that peculiar combination of bleach, overcooked vegetables, and something else I couldn't name. Despair, maybe. The death of independence. My room was on the 2nd floor, number 247. I shared it with George Patterson, an 83-year-old former accountant who'd had a stroke. He couldn't speak anymore, just made these wet, gurgling sounds that kept me awake at night. 2 narrow beds, 2 small dressers, 1 window overlooking the parking lot. This was my life now. I unpacked my 6 boxes, slowly trying to make the small space feel like something other than a prison cell. Photos of Caroline and Melissa went on the dresser. My business awards stayed in the box, looking at them hurt too much. The books I'd planned to read sat stacked by my bed, though I couldn't focus enough to get past the first page. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. Melissa didn't visit. Not once in those first 6 weeks. She called twice, brief, uncomfortable conversations, where she asked how I was adjusting. Trevor came once in mid-May, wearing an expensive suit I'd never seen before. "Just need you to sign a few more things, Gregory," he said, spreading papers across the common room table. "We need to liquidate some assets to cover house repairs. Nothing major." I signed. What choice did I have? I found out later he'd stolen $180,000 from my retirement fund that day. The days blurred together. Breakfast at 7, morning activities, bingo chair, yoga craft projects designed for people with dementia. Lunch at noon, afternoon nap, dinner at 5, lights out at 9. I was 62 years old, living like I was 90. George died on a Tuesday in late May. I woke that morning knowing something was wrong. His breathing had stopped, and the room was too quiet. Nurses rushed in after I pressed the call button. By breakfast, he was gone. That afternoon, they brought in a new roommate. He lasted 3 days before his family moved him to a private room. Then another man, then another. 5 roommates in 6 weeks. I was the constant, the one nobody came to visit. I thought about calling Catherine Walsh, but what would I say? That my daughter had stolen my life. That I'd signed it all away willingly, too confused and frightened to know what I was doing, had no proof. Just signatures that looked like mine. Bernard Bernie Jacobs walked into my life on June 15, 2022. I was sitting in the common room, staring at a television I wasn't watching, when I heard a loud voice echo down the hallway. "Jimmy Patterson, 3rd floor. Well, why the hell didn't you say so?" The voice belonged to a bear of a man, easily 6'3", with white hair and a face weathered by decades of sun and salt water. He wore jeans and a navy sweatshirt, and he moved through Pinehurst like he owned the place. He caught me staring. "You know Jimmy Patterson?" "George Patterson was my roommate. He passed away 3 weeks ago." Bernie's face fell. He pulled up a chair and sat heavily. "Ah, hell. Jimmy was a good man. We served together in the Pacific back in '73. I was supposed to visit last month, but my boat needed repairs. I'm sorry for your loss." "Yeah." Bernie looked at me properly. "You're too young to be in a place like this. What are you, 60? 62. Jesus Christ. What happened?" I don't know why I told him. Maybe because he was a stranger. Maybe because I was desperate to talk to someone who wasn't a nurse or another dying resident. But I told him everything about the company, about Trevor and Melissa, about the signatures I didn't remember making, and the house I'd lost, and the life stolen from me piece by piece. Bernie listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "That's elder abuse," he said finally. "Financial exploitation, that's what they call it. They're my family, my daughter. I don't give a damn if she's the Queen of England. What you're describing is a crime." Bernie leaned forward. "You have any proof, bank statements, copies of those documents?" "They took everything. All I have is what's in my room." Bernie stood, paced to the window, stared out at the parking lot. When he turned back, his face was set with determination. "I have a place in Maine, Camden, little town on the coast. 3-bedroom house too big for one old sailor. You could stay there. Get yourself sorted out away from all this." I stared at him. "You don't even know me." "I know enough. I know you don't belong here. I know your family is robbing you blind, and I know that if you stay much longer, you're going to give up completely." He held out his hand. "What do you say?" I thought about Melissa, about the daughter who'd stopped visiting, who'd stolen my home and business and life, about Trevor's forged signatures and Dr. Martinez's clean bill of health, about George Patterson dying alone in the bed next to mine. I took Bernie's hand. "When do we leave?" "Give me 3 days to make arrangements. Can you be ready?" I laughed the first real laugh in months. "I can pack everything I own in 20 minutes. 3 days later, on June 18th, 2022, I walked out of Pinehurst with Bernie Jacobs. No one tried to stop us. I wasn't a prisoner. I was a voluntary resident who'd chosen to leave. Melissa called as we crossed into Idaho. "Dad." "Where are you?" Pinehurst called and said you checked out. "I'm going to Maine." "What, Dad? You can't just leave. We need to discuss this. You're not well." I hung up. Then I turned off the phone. The drive took 53 hours. We took turns at the wheel, stopped at diners, and rest stops, slept in cheap motels. Bernie told me stories about his Navy days, about his late wife Dorothy, about the house in Camden he'd bought 30 years ago. I told him about Carolyn, about raising Melissa alone after cancer took my wife, about building Callahan Consulting from nothing, about the pride I'd felt watching my daughter grow, about the moment I realized that woman was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. We crossed into Maine on June 21st, the summer solstice. The longest day of the year. Bernie took the coastal route, and suddenly there it was, the Atlantic Ocean stretching endless and blue under the afternoon sun. "Welcome to Camden," Bernie said as we passed the town sign. I rolled down the window and breathed in salt air. My eyes burned with tears I didn't try to hide. I had $847 in my wallet. Everything else was gone: my house, my business, my retirement savings, my dignity. My daughter had taken it all. But sitting in that truck, watching the Atlantic waves crash against the rocky Maine coast, I could breathe again. For the first time in 6 months, I could breathe. Depression doesn't disappear just because the ocean outside is beautiful. Bernie's house sat on Bayview Street, 3 blocks from the harbor. A small Cape Cod cottage painted weathered blue with a front porch that overlooked Penobscot Bay. It was perfect, cozy quiet, with enough space for 2 men to live without getting in each other's way. But perfect surroundings couldn't fix what was broken inside me. The first weeks were the hardest. I'd wake at 3 in the morning, my heart racing, convinced I'd heard Melissa's voice or Trevor's footsteps. I'd lie there in the darkness of my new room, listening to the waves and Bernie's snoring from down the hall, trying to remember that I was safe now, that I'd escaped. But escaped to what I was 62 years old, with $847 to my name. No home, no business, no family. Everything I'd spent 4 decades building was gone, and I didn't even have the legal standing to fight for it back. I'd signed it all away, or at least someone had signed it away using my name. The anger came in waves as relentless as the tide outside my window. Some days I'd pace the small house like a caged animal, fury burning through me so hot I couldn't see straight. Other days the depression was so heavy I couldn't get out of bed until noon. Bernie never pushed. He'd make coffee, leave a cup outside my door, and go about his day. Sometimes I'd hear him on the porch talking to neighbors or working on one of his endless repair projects. He gave me space, but he never let me disappear completely. "Breakfast is ready when you are," he'd call through my door. "Or lunch, or dinner. I'm not particular about timing." I started taking walks along the harbor path. At first, just to get out of the house, to escape the four walls that felt like they were closing in. Camden in late June was beautiful, tourists filling the streets, sailboats dotting the bay, the smell of salt water and pine trees mixing in the air. But I barely saw any of it. I walked with my head down, hands shoved in my pockets, lost in the endless loop of what I'd lost and how I'd lost it. The lobster boats went out every morning at dawn. I'd watch them from the breakwater, these weathered vessels heading into the gray morning light, and feel a strange kinship with their routine. They knew what they were doing. They had purpose. I was just a man walking in circles, going nowhere. It was on one of those morning walks, 3 weeks after arriving in Camden, that I first met Nancy Kowalski. Her bookstore, the Reading Nook, occupied a narrow storefront on Main Street. I'd walked past it a dozen times without going in, but that morning a sudden rain shower drove me through the door. The smell of old books and fresh coffee hit me immediately. The store was small but well organized, with floor-to-ceiling shelves and a coffee bar tucked into the back corner. A woman in her mid-50s looked up from behind the counter, her reading glasses perched on her head. "Welcome to the Reading Nook. Coffee's fresh if you want some." "Just escaping the rain," I said. "Best reason to visit a bookstore." She smiled. "I'm Nancy. You're new in town. I've seen you walking past every morning. Small town life. Everyone noticed everything." "Gregory," I said, and found myself accepting the cup of coffee she offered. That became my routine. Every morning I'd walk to the Reading Nook, drink coffee, browse books I couldn't afford to buy. Nancy never seemed to mind. She'd chat about Camden, about the tourists, about her customers. Light conversation that didn't require me to explain why a man my age was living off a stranger's charity. Bernie noticed the change. "You seem a little less likely to punch a hole in my wall," he observed one evening over dinner. "Nancy's place doing you good. It's just coffee." "Coffee's never just coffee in a small town," Bernie said, "especially when the person pouring it is as nosy as Nancy Kowalski." He was right. Nancy was slowly, carefully drawing my story out of me. Not all at once, just small pieces over weeks of morning conversations. Where I was from, how I'd ended up in Camden, what I'd done before. "So you were a business consultant," she said one morning in mid-August. 40 years, you said." 38, I corrected. "Built it from nothing." "Must have been good at it." I shrugged. The anger flared. I had been good at it. Good enough to build a multi-million-dollar operation. Good enough that my own daughter and her husband had stolen it from me. Nancy was quiet for a moment, then, "Can I ask you something? Would you mind looking at my books?" I set down my coffee. "Your books, the store's books, financial records, inventory management, that sort of thing." She looked embarrassed. "I'm an English major who fell in love with literature. The business side, I'm drowning if I'm honest. I can barely keep the lights on." I hadn't looked at a balance sheet in 4 months. Hadn't thought about profit margins or cash flow or any of the things that had once been second nature to me. "I don't have any credentials anymore," I said. "No access to my licenses, my..." I'm not asking for credentials. I'm asking if you'd take a look. As a favor, I'll pay you in coffee and whatever books you want." Something stirred in my chest. Not quite hope, but maybe its distant cousin. "Let me see what you've got." Nancy's books were a mess, but an understandable mess. She was doing everything herself, using outdated software, making decisions based on gut feeling rather than data. But the bones of a good business were there. She had loyal customers, unique inventory, a great location. I spent 3 days at a corner table in the reading nook. Spreadsheets spread around me, my old business mind, waking up after its long hibernation. The work felt good, familiar, like finding a piece of myself I'd thought was lost. "Your inventory turnover is killing you," I told Nancy on the 3rd day. "You're keeping too much stock of slow-moving titles, and your coffee bar you're undercharging by at least 30%. The margins are too thin." I showed her the numbers, explained the changes she needed to make, watched her face light up as she understood. Gregory, this is incredible. How much do I owe you?" "Nothing. You gave me something to do besides walk in circles and feel sorry for myself." But Nancy insisted on paying something. We settled on a consulting arrangement. I'd help her restructure the business, and she'd pay me a small monthly retainer. Enough for me to contribute to Bernie's household expenses. Enough to feel like less of a charity case. Word spread quickly in a town of 5,000 people. By September, I had 3 more clients: a local bakery, a fishing equipment shop, and a small tech startup run by a young couple who'd moved to Maine from Boston. The work was different from what I'd done at Callahan Consulting. Smaller scale, more hands-on, but it was real, and it was mine, and nobody could take it away from me. Bernie watched my transformation with quiet satisfaction. "Told you," he said one evening as we sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the bay in shades of orange and pink. "Oh, you weren't done yet." I thought about Seattle, about the life I'd lost. About Melissa and Trevor living in my house, running my company into the ground while I rebuilt myself from nothing in a town 3,000 miles away. The anger was still there, but it was changing, transforming into something else, something colder and more patient. "No," I agreed. "I'm not done yet." By October, word had spread throughout Camden. There was a business consultant who actually knew what he was doing. Someone who understood small-town economics, who didn't charge big city prices, who genuinely cared about helping local businesses survive. My phone, the cheap prepaid one I'd bought to replace the one I'd turned off in Idaho, started ringing with requests. A restaurant owner, a boat repair shop, a woman who wanted to open an art gallery, but didn't know how to write a business plan. I was building something again. Not the empire I'd lost, but something smaller, more personal, something that was entirely my own. And for the first time since April, when I'd watched my life disappear into Trevor Sterling's forged signatures, I felt like Gregory Callahan again. I'd spent 40 years fixing broken businesses. Camden needed exactly that. By November 2022, my little consulting practice had grown beyond anything I'd imagined. What started with Nancy's bookstore had snowballed into something real, something that mattered. Emily Parker came to me in early October. She owned Harbor Light Bakery, a small shop 2 blocks from the water that had been struggling since the pandemic. Her pastries were incredible. I'd been buying her cinnamon rolls every Sunday, but her business model was killing her. "I'm 3 months behind on rent," she told me, sitting across from me at the reading nook, with spreadsheets that made my consultant's heart weep. "My landlord's being patient, but I can't keep asking for extensions." I spent a week analyzing her operation. The problems were clear. She was underpricing her products, overstaffing during slow periods, and her wholesale accounts were losing money on every transaction. "You're too generous," I told her. "You're running a charity, not a bakery." We restructured everything. Raised prices by 20% less than her competitors, cut her staff hours strategically, dropped the wholesale accounts that were bleeding her dry. Within 6 weeks, she was profitable for the first time in 18 months. "I don't know how to thank you," Emily said, handing me a check for $500, my first real payment as an independent consultant. I held that check in my hand and felt something crack open inside me. Not the pride I'd felt at Callahan Consulting, where six-figure deals were routine. This was different. Deeper. This was the knowledge that I'd helped someone who genuinely needed it, using skills I'd thought were lost forever. I sat in Bernie's truck in the bakery parking lot and cried. Frank Morrison's restaurant came next. The Lighthouse had been a Camden institution for 30 years, but Frank was 68 and drowning in debt from a kitchen renovation that had gone over budget. His daughter wanted him to sell, retire, move to Florida. "But this restaurant is my life," Frank said, his weathered hands wrapped around a coffee cup at my usual corner table. I looked at his numbers and saw a path forward. Not easy, but possible. We renegotiated his supplier contracts, restructured his menu to focus on higher margin items, implemented a reservation system to reduce waste. I even helped him set up a small catering operation for the summer tourist season. 3 months later, Frank was back in the black. His daughter stopped pushing him to sell. "You gave me my restaurant back," he said. "More than that, you gave me hope." Word spread. The Camden Town Council invited me to speak at their November meeting about small business development. I stood in front of 20 people in the municipal building and talked about what I'd learned, that strong local businesses create strong communities, that sometimes all someone needs is a little expertise and a lot of patience. Rebecca Stone, the town councilor, shook my hand afterward. "We're lucky to have you here, Gregory. Camden needed someone like you." Someone like me. Not someone who'd lost everything. Not someone whose own daughter had betrayed him. Just someone who could help. I was becoming part of something, part of this community that had welcomed a broken stranger and given him room to rebuild. The work gave me purpose, but it was the rhythm of life in Camden that gave me peace. My days developed a pattern that felt almost meditative in its simplicity. Morning walks along the harbor, watching the lobster boats head out. Coffee at the reading nook, where Nancy and I had become genuine friends. Afternoons consulting with clients, solving problems, watching small businesses stabilize and grow. Evenings on Bernie's porch, drinking beer and watching the sunset paint the bay in impossible colors. Dinners were often communal affairs. Bernie would invite Nancy or Emily from the bakery or Frank from the Lighthouse. We'd cook together, share stories, laugh in a way I hadn't laughed in years. These people didn't know about Callahan Consulting, or my house in Capitol Hill, or what Melissa and Trevor had stolen. They knew me as Gregory, the business consultant, who'd helped save their bookstore or their bakery or their restaurant. They knew the version of me I was becoming, not the version I'd lost. My body changed too. The walks, the physical work of helping clients, the simple act of being present in my life instead of drowning in depression, it all showed. My face lost its gray pallor, replaced by the kind of tan you get from actual sun, not a tanning bed. I lost 15 pounds of stress weight. My hands, which had trembled those first weeks in Camden, were steady again. I caught my reflection in the reading nook's window one December morning and barely recognized myself. Not younger, I'd never look 62 again, but healthier. Alive. "You look good," Bernie observed that evening. Like somebody who remembers how to be happy. Was I happy? The question caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on surviving, on rebuilding, that I hadn't stopped to ask myself that. But yes, despite everything I'd lost, despite the anger that still burned low and constant in my chest when I thought about Melissa and Trevor, despite the fact that I owned nothing but 6 boxes of belongings and a prepaid phone, yes, I was happy. Not the happiness I'd known before when success meant quarterly growth and client retention rates. This was quieter, deeper, the satisfaction of work that mattered, the comfort of genuine friendship. The peace of falling asleep to ocean waves instead of worrying about what signature Trevor was forging this week. Christmas came. Bernie and I decorated the house, strung lights along the porch railing. Nancy invited us to her annual holiday party where half of Camden seemed to show up. Emily brought pastries. Frank brought lobster rolls. Rebecca Stone gave me a bottle of local whiskey and told me the town was officially considering me a resident now. "You've been here 6 months," she said. "That's the trial period. You pass." I'd been in Camden for 6 months. Half a year since Bernie had rescued me from Pinehurst. Half a year since I'd escaped the life Melissa and Trevor had trapped me in. I thought about Seattle occasionally, wondered what they were doing with my company, my house. Whether Melissa ever thought about me beyond the monthly perfunctory text messages I never answered. Whether Trevor was still forging my signature, still stealing what little remained. But those thoughts came less frequently now. They had less power. Seattle was 3,000 miles away and felt like another lifetime. I was building something new, something that couldn't be taken away because it existed in relationships and reputation and the quiet satisfaction of work well done. I was Gregory Callahan again, not the man who'd built Callahan Consulting, but someone better. Someone who understood that success wasn't measured in revenue or office space, but in the ability to sleep peacefully at night. I was happy. Genuinely, unexpectedly, impossibly happy. And then, on a cold January morning in 2023, my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, a Florida area code. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Gregory Callahan. "Yes. This is Catherine Walsh. I need to talk to you about your daughter." Everything changed again. "Catherine Walsh, your family attorney. I've been trying to reach you for months." I stood in Bernie's kitchen on a cold Saturday morning in October 2023, phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what I'd just heard. Catherine Walsh. The attorney Trevor had told me retired to Florida. "You're supposed to be retired," I said. "I am retired. Mostly. But I kept a few files I couldn't let go of." A pause. "Gregory, we need to talk about your father's estate. There's a trust you need to know about. My father had died in 2015, 8 years ago. I'd handled his estate myself, sold his condo, distributed his modest savings. There was no trust." "I don't understand. I can't discuss this over the phone. Can you meet me in Portland Tuesday at 2? Something in her voice made me say yes. Bernie drove me to Portland on Tuesday. Neither of us spoke much during the 2-hour drive. Catherine met me in the lobby, older than I remembered, her hair completely gray, but her eyes sharp as ever. "Gregory, you look well. Better than the last time I saw you." "The last time you saw me was at my father's funeral." "No. The last time I saw you was April 2022 at a coffee shop in Seattle. You were with your daughter and her husband. You looked diminished." She shook her head. "I started making calls after that. Started digging. Come upstairs." Her office was small but organized, covered with legal files. "Your father came to see me in January 2015, 6 weeks before he died." Catherine began pulling out a thick folder. "He wanted to create a trust that you'd inherit, but that wouldn't go through probate. Something private." She spread documents across the desk. Deeds, stock certificates, bank statements. "Your grandfather, Robert Callahan Sr., owned mineral rights to land in West Texas. Bought them in 1947 for almost nothing. Oil was discovered there in 1963. I knew this story. My grandfather had told me about it, the lucky break that helped send my father to college. The royalty payments went into a trust," Catherine continued. "Your grandfather was smart. When he died in 1978, the trust passed to your father. The payments were modest at first, maybe $20,000 a year. Your father never touched them. Just let them accumulate, reinvested the income. She pushed a statement toward me. That's the current value of the Mineral Rights Trust. The oil company's been paying royalties for 45 years, with compound interest. This says $2, $7 million. That's just the mineral rights. Your father also had a stock portfolio, blue chip companies, decades of steady growth. Another document. Value $900,000. I couldn't breathe. There's also a life insurance policy held in trust. $200,000. Catherine's voice was gentle. Total estate value $3.8 million. The room tilted. I gripped the desk. Why didn't I know? When Dad died, I went through everything. Because he didn't want you to know. Not then. Catherine pulled out an envelope yellowed with age. He left you a letter. I was instructed to give it to you when the time was right. My hands shook as I opened it. My father's handwriting. Gregory. If you're reading this, Catherine has decided you need this money. I trust her judgment. I never told you about the mineral rights because I wanted you to build your own success. You did that. Callahan Consulting was all yours. I was proud, but I also knew that money changes things, changes relationships. I watched what happened when my brother inherited Grandpa's business, the fights the family torn apart. I didn't want that for you and Melissa. I wanted her to love you for who you are, not what you have. This money is yours. Not community property, not marital assets. Yours alone. Use it to be free. You were the only one who ever really cared about me, not what I could give you. Dad, I read it twice. My father had known. Even back in 2015, he'd known something about Melissa. Does Melissa know about this? Catherine asked. No. She thinks everything was distributed after Dad died. Good. This is entirely separate from any claims she might have. It's protected in trust structures. Even the conservatorship they tried couldn't touch this because they didn't know it existed. I stared at the documents. $3.8 million. Enough to fight back, to hire lawyers to reclaim everything Melissa and Trevor had stolen. Or enough to be free. What do you want to do? Catherine asked. I thought about Seattle, about the house on Capitol Hill, about Callahan Consulting, about Melissa and Trevor probably still forging signatures, still stealing what remained. Then I thought about Camden, about Bernie's house on Bayview Street, about the Reading Nook and Emily's Bakery, about the life I'd built from $847 and determination. I want to buy Bernie's house. He won't sell it to me, but I want to buy it. Catherine smiled. That's it. I want to set up a charitable foundation, elder abuse prevention and small business development. And your daughter, she'll never know about this. Let her think I'm still the broken old man she threw away. I don't want any of it back. We spent 3 hours structuring everything. I bought Bernie's house, he protested, then cried, then finally accepted. I set up the Callahan Foundation with $500,000 initial funding. The rest I invested conservatively, creating monthly income. I kept it quiet, paid cash through an LLC, kept driving Bernie's old truck, kept having coffee at the Reading Nook. Nothing in my daily life changed, except the knowledge that I was finally completely free. Financial independence didn't just mean having money. It meant having choices. It meant nobody could control me through forged signatures ever again. I drove back to Camden that evening, feeling lighter than I had in years. The anger I'd carried since April 2022 was still there, but transformed into something patient and quiet. I'd escaped Seattle with nothing. Now I had everything that mattered. Months passed. The Callahan Foundation started making grants. I helped 12 more businesses stabilize. Bernie and I celebrated Christmas in our house with Nancy and Emily and half of Camden. I was happy. Genuinely, deeply, impossibly happy. And then, on a February morning in 2025, my phone rang. Gregory, it's Douglas Merrick. I don't know if you remember me, we did business together back in Seattle. I remembered. Douglas had been a client, then a friend. Greg, you need to know what your daughter is doing. Douglas Merrick's voice was tight with controlled anger. I pressed the phone harder against my ear, my other hand gripping Bernie's kitchen counter. Tell me everything, I said. I'm in Seattle for a tech conference. Last night I had drinks with some old contacts and your daughter's name came up. Douglas paused. Greg, it's bad. Really bad. I waited, my heart hammering. Callahan Consulting is hemorrhaging money. Trevor's been making wild investments, crypto tech startups that went belly up. Word on the street is they're leveraged to the hilt. How bad? I did some digging. They've mortgaged your house. Second mortgage last year. Between that and Trevor's losses, they're looking at over $1 million in debt. I closed my eyes. My house. The house my father bought in 1962. Where Caroline died. Where I raised Melissa. There's more. They're throwing a grand opening event. February 14th. Valentine's Day. Big spectacle, 150 guests, catering, everything. They're calling it Sterling Callahan Consulting Group. Sterling Callahan. Trevor's name first. But they're still using your reputation, Greg. Telling people you're a silent partner, that you endorsed the transition. They're using your house as the venue. Using your name, your credibility, everything you built. The anger hit me like a physical blow. Not hot, desperate rage. This was different. Cold. Calculated. Clear. Greg, you still there? Go to the party, Douglas. What? Go to the party. I need you there. Greg, what are you planning? I'll call you back. I hung up and immediately dialed Catherine Walsh. She answered on the second ring. Gregory, I was just about to call you. Catherine, I need you to investigate something. Trevor Sterling, those documents I signed back in 2022. I'm already on it. After our meeting in October, I hired a forensic document examiner. Gregory, the signatures on those documents, the power of attorney, the deed transfer, the Pinehurst admission forms, they're forgeries. The kitchen tilted slightly. You're certain? I have a 47-page report from Dr. Patricia Williams, formerly with the FBI. She compared known samples of your signature with the documents. The pressure points are wrong. The letter formation's inconsistent. Someone practiced your signature extensively, but they couldn't replicate the unconscious patterns. Trevor, I said. Almost certainly. Dr. Williams believes he practiced for 6 to 8 months based on the progression. The earliest forgeries are shakier. By December 2021, he'd perfected it. I thought back to those months. Trevor taking me to Mariners games. Always nearby when I was signing documents. Watching, studying, learning. Can you prove it was him? With enough investigation, yes. The bigger question is what you want to do with this information. I watched through the window as February snow began to fall over Camden. I want to file charges, but not yet. Not until February 14th. Their grand opening event. Douglas Merrick will be there. Catherine, I need you to do something for me. Over the next hour, we built the plan. Catherine would complete the investigation, compile every piece of evidence, the forensic analysis, the bank records, showing the $180,000 theft, the mortgage documents. She'd coordinate with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. "There's a federal investigation already," I asked. "Small potatoes compared to your case, but yes. Trevor's been involved in questionable crypto transactions. Wire fraud, possible money laundering. The FBI's been building a case, but they didn't have enough for charges. Your forgeries change everything. This is identity theft, elder abuse, potentially RICO charges, if Melissa was knowingly involved." "She was," I said, remembering her face across from me at that attorney's office. "Then we have a case. But Gregory, if we do this publicly at their event, it won't just be justice. It'll be humiliation. In front of 150 people. Is that what you want?" I thought about my father's letter, about the $3.8 million he'd hidden, about his hope that Melissa loved me for who I was. He'd been wrong. She'd never loved me at all. I don't want revenge. I want justice. I want every person in that room to know what they did. I want the business community they've been lying to, using my name, my reputation, to know the truth. Then we'll make it happen. Catherine outlined the logistics. She'd have FBI agents ready, discreet, standing by. Douglas would attend the party, and at the right moment mention my name casually. "By the way, I spoke with Greg Callahan recently. Did you know he's doing consulting work in Maine?" That would be the spark. Melissa and Trevor had been telling everyone I was incapacitated. Learning I was thriving would create questions, doubts, cracks in their story, and then the FBI would walk in with arrest warrants. "When do we move?" I asked. "I need 2 more weeks to finalize everything. The forensic report needs formal certification. The FBI needs to complete their parallel investigation. But we can have everything ready by February 14th. Valentine's Day, the day everything would fall apart. Once this goes public, once the arrests happen, it's going to be news," Catherine said. "Are you prepared for that?" I looked around Bernie's kitchen, at the photos on the fridge, me with Nancy, with Emily, with Bernie at last summer's Harbor Festival. I'd built a life here. This would disrupt it. But some things were more important than peace. "I'm prepared. It's time people knew what elder abuse looks like. Sometimes it's your own daughter forging your signature while she smiles at you." After we hung up, I sat at the kitchen table watching the snow fall. Bernie came home an hour later. "You okay?" he asked. "No, but I will be." I told him everything. Bernie listened without interrupting, his face growing harder with each detail. "They forged your signature for months, while pretending to care for you." "Yes." Bernie was quiet. Then, "I'm coming with you to Seattle." "Bernie, you don't have to." "The hell I don't. You're my family now. And I want to see the look on their faces when it all comes crashing down." I felt something tight in my chest loosen. "Thank you." While I prepared for justice, Melissa was preparing for a party that would destroy itself. February 14th was 2 weeks away. I called Douglas back. "I'm going to need you to do exactly what I say. Can you do that?" "Greg, whatever you need." "Good. Here's the plan." Douglas texted me at 7:02 p.m. "Party's started. It's spectacular. And it's pathetic." I sat in Bernie's living room in Camden, 3,000 miles away, phone in hand. Bernie was beside me on the couch, glancing up every few minutes to check my face. "How's it going?" he asked. I showed him the text. "Spectacular and pathetic," Bernie repeated. "That about sums it up." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Douglas. "You wouldn't recognize your house. They've completely renovated. Looks like a corporate headquarters now. My house. 1247 East Prospect Street, Capitol Hill." The three-story brownstone my father had bought in 1962 for $28,000, where every major moment of my life had happened. Now it was the headquarters of Sterling Callahan Consulting Group. Another text, sending photos. The images loaded slowly. The first showed the exterior my house transformed. The brick sandblasted clean. New windows. A professional sign, Sterling Callahan Consulting Group, founded 1985. They were using the year I'd started Callahan Consulting, claiming continuity, claiming legitimacy. The next photo showed the interior. My living room. Caroline's living room, where we'd hosted Melissa's birthday parties and Sunday mornings, was now a reception area. Modern furniture, glass tables, abstract art on the walls. Jesus, Bernie muttered, looking over my shoulder. Another photo, the dining room converted into conference space. My father's mahogany table gone, replaced by something sleek and contemporary. The chandelier Carolyn had picked out in 1994 replaced by track lighting. They'd erased every trace of the family that had lived there. Douglas's next text, about 150 people here. Seattle business elite. Some investors I recognize. A few journalists. Melissa's working the room like a pro. I could picture it. Melissa in a designer dress, probably something expensive. Her smile bright and practiced. Playing the role of successful businesswoman, beloved daughter, carrying on her father's legacy. All built on forged signatures and stolen money. My phone rang, Douglas calling now. Greg, I'm in the bathroom. Only place I can talk privately. You need to hear this. Go ahead. The guest list is impressive. Tech investors, venture capitalists, representatives from two major Seattle law firms. Melissa and Trevor are presenting themselves as the next generation. Traditional wisdom meets modern innovation. Are people buying it? Honestly, yes. They're good, Greg. Really good. Melissa gives this speech about honoring your legacy, about how you built something incredible and trusted them to carry it forward. She's got this whole story about you retiring to focus on your health. The anger was cold and steady in my chest. What about Trevor? He's the numbers guy, talking about expansion plans, new markets, technology integration. Very polished, very convincing. If I didn't know what they'd done, I'd be impressed. What's the atmosphere like? Celebratory. Champagne flowing freely, Veuve Clicquot, knowing Trevor's taste. There's a photographer, Allison Kim, documenting everything. They're treating this like a major milestone. I closed my eyes. In their minds, maybe it was. Trevor seems nervous, though. I've been watching him. Keeps checking his phone, stepping away from conversations. His smile doesn't reach his eyes. The debt, I said. Probably. Word in the business community is they're overextended. Some people here are whispering about it, wondering why they're throwing such an expensive party when they're supposedly struggling. How's Melissa handling it? She's better at hiding it, but I can see the tension. The way she grips her champagne glass too tight. The forced quality to her laugh. She's performing. Another buzz, a text from Catherine Walsh. FBI agents in position. 2 plainclothes officers outside. Seattle PD coordinating. Arrest warrants ready. Just say when. Douglas, tell me about the house. What else have they changed? Everything, Greg. The whole first floor is corporate space. Your study is gone. It's a strategy room now. I haven't been upstairs, but from what I can see, they've stripped away anything personal. It's like your family never lived here. Caroline's reading nook. The spot where Melissa took her first steps. The kitchen where I'd made breakfast every Sunday, all erased, replaced by sterile corporate aesthetics. There's something else. I overheard Trevor on the phone earlier. Someone was calling about money, sounded like a loan shark. Trevor was saying he needed more time, that the business was about to take off, that he had investors interested. All lies. All lies. Greg, this whole thing is a house of cards. They're throwing this party to convince people they're successful, to drum up business and attract investors who'll bail them out. It's desperate. My phone buzzed. Another photo from Douglas. This one showed Melissa at the center of a group holding champagne mid-laugh. She looked radiant, successful, happy. She looked like someone who'd gotten away with it. The speeches are starting. Melissa's about to address the crowd. Let me switch to text. For the next 20 minutes, Douglas sent real-time updates. 7:34 p.m. Melissa's speaking. My father built something extraordinary. He taught me that business isn't just about profit. It's about relationships, trust, integrity. The irony is stunning. 7:41 p.m. Now Trevor, talking about modernizing Gregory's vision and expanding into new markets. People are eating it up. 7:52 p.m. Toast to the Callahan legacy. Everyone's drinking. Everyone's buying it. They have no idea they're celebrating a fraud. I sat there in Camden watching my daughter lie to 150 people in my house using my name, claiming my legacy. Bernie put his hand on my shoulder. You okay? No, but I will be. At 8:15 p.m. Douglas texted, parties hitting its peak. People mingling, networking. This is the moment they've been building toward. I texted back, give it another 30 minutes. Let them enjoy it. Then we move. Catherine Walsh sent another message. FBI confirms ready. Agents have visual on Trevor Sterling. Arrest warrant in hand. Waiting for your signal. I looked at the clock. 8:16 p.m. in Camden. 5:16 p.m. in Seattle. Bernie, in about 30 minutes, everything's going to change. Good, Bernie said. It's about damn time. At 8:45 p.m. I texted Douglas, are you ready? His response was immediate. Been ready, just tell me when. I took a deep breath, thought about Carolyn, about my father, about the life stolen from me, and the better life I'd built from its ashes. I texted back, now. Do it now. At 8:47 p.m. Seattle time, Douglas Merrick walked into a conversation circle that included Melissa Trevor, 2 tech investors, and a journalist from the Seattle Times. Douglas Merrick was a master of perfectly timed bombs. According to the texts he sent me afterward, it started small, just a casual comment in a conversation circle that included Melissa Trevor, 2 tech investors, and Rebecca Hart from the Seattle Times. By the way, I spoke with Greg Callahan last week. Did you know he's doing consulting work in Maine? Very successful from what I hear. Quite remarkable for someone who's supposedly in declining health. The silence that followed was, Douglas told me later, exquisite. Melissa's champagne glass stopped halfway to her lips. Trevor's smile froze. The tech investors exchanged confused glances. Rebecca Hart, journalist instincts activated, pulled out her phone. I'm sorry, what Gregory Callahan is actively working. Oh, absolutely, Douglas continued. We had a lovely conversation. He's living in Camden, Maine, consulting for small businesses, sharp as ever. But William Bradford, a tech investor, looked between Douglas and Trevor. We were told Gregory was incapacitated, that he'd had to step back due to health issues. Incapacitated. Douglas let surprise color his voice. Who told you that? Trevor stepped forward, his hand reaching out. Douglas, perhaps we should... But Douglas wasn't finished. He raised his voice slightly, ensuring others nearby could hear. In fact, Greg was telling me about his inheritance. Didn't you know about the Texas oil rights? Quite substantial from what I understand. The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Texas oil rights. Margaret Brown, a venture capitalist, turned sharply. Gregory has oil rights. From his grandfather. Mineral rights in West Texas. Been paying royalties for decades, worth several $1,000,000, I believe. He was quite pleased to finally access them. I could picture the scene from 3,000 miles away. Conversations dying as people turned to listen. Melissa's face going pale beneath her makeup. William Bradford took a step toward Trevor. Sterling, you told us Callahan had nothing left. You said he was incompetent, that the business transfer was necessary. That's not... Trevor stammered. You said he'd lost everything in bad investments. Margaret Brown added, her voice sharp. You said the family had to step in because he was making irrational decisions. Douglas watched it unfold, still playing innocent. Lost everything, that doesn't sound right. When we spoke, he was quite clear about his finances. Talked about buying his house in Maine, outright setting up a charitable foundation. Patricia Van Horn, Seattle's most connected socialite and notorious gossip, materialized at the edge of the group. She had an uncanny ability to sense scandal. Did I hear someone say Gregory Callahan is alive and well in Maine? The party's ambient noise began to drop. More people turning, listening, sensing something happening. Very much alive, Douglas confirmed. And thriving. We had coffee just last week. He looked better than I've seen him in years. Melissa finally found her voice. Douglas, I think there's been some misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. I have his number if anyone wants to verify. Not exactly the behavior of someone who's been declared incompetent, is it? William Bradford pulled out his phone. I'm calling him right now. Trevor, if you've been lying to us. Please don't, Trevor said, panic creeping into his voice. William, we can explain. But it was too late. The truth was spreading like wildfire. I could track it through Douglas's texts, 8:51 p.m. People are pulling out phones. Someone's Googling your name. The Seattle Times journalist is taking notes. 8:53 p.m. Melissa just grabbed Trevor's arm, intense whispered conversation. She looks like she's about to be sick. 8:55 p.m. William Bradford just announced loudly that if Gregory is alive and competent, the entire business transfer might be fraudulent. 8:57 p.m. Trevor tried to make an announcement, got shouted down. Someone yelled, "Where's the real Gregory Callahan?" I sat in Bernie's living room watching the texts come in, feeling nothing but cold, patient satisfaction. This was justice, not revenge justice. The truth, finally, after 3 years of lies. At 9:00 p.m. Douglas called me. Greg, you need to hear this. I'm recording. He held up his phone and I could hear the chaos, raised voices, accusations, someone shouting about fraud. And through it all, Melissa's voice, high and desperate. He's my father. We were protecting him. He was confused. Then why didn't you mention the oil rights? William Bradford sounded furious. You told us the estate had been fully distributed. You said there were no hidden assets. We didn't know, Trevor started. Bullshit. You managed his entire estate and didn't know about millions in mineral rights. Patricia Van Horn's voice, clear and delighted. Oh, this is delicious. Wait until the Times gets hold of this. We didn't steal anything. Melissa's voice cracked. He signed everything over willingly. We have documents. Documents signed by a man you claimed was mentally incompetent, Douglas said. The documents that transferred everything, his house, his business, his accounts to you. while telling everyone he couldn't manage his own affairs. That's called fraud, someone else chimed in. That's elder abuse. The texts kept coming. 9:04 p.m. Melissa is crying. Real tears. Trevor looks like he's going to pass out. Several guests leaving. 9:06 p.m. Rebecca Hart from The Times just cornered Melissa, asked her directly if you consented. Melissa couldn't answer, just kept saying, "It's complicated." 9:08 p.m. Someone asked about the house, how they could use it as headquarters if you're alive and competent. 9:10 p.m. William Bradford just announced he's pulling his investment. 3 other investors immediately followed. The party was imploding. The carefully constructed facade of Sterling Callahan Consulting Group was crumbling in real time in front of 150 witnesses, with a Seattle Times journalist taking notes. Everything they'd built on my stolen life was falling apart. "Greg," Douglas said into the phone. "Trevor just got a phone call. Whoever it was, his face went white. He's pulling Melissa toward the door." "The loan sharks," I said. "Bad publicity like this, they'll want their money immediately." I sat there in Camden, 3,000 miles away, watching justice unfold through texts and phone calls. Bernie sat beside me, silent and steady, and then at 9:15 Pacific Standard Time, the doorbell rang. "Are you still with me? Drop a comment below sharing what you think Gregory should do with this unexpected fortune. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Before we continue, I want to mention that some elements of this story have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If you'd rather not proceed, feel free to pause here. Marcus Hill was just doing his job. He had no idea he was about to end a marriage. Douglas texted me at 9:16 p.m. Process server just walked in. This is about to get very ugly. Marcus Hill was a professional process server, mid-30s, carrying a leather folder expression neutral. He'd served thousands of documents. To him, this was just another job. He walked through the crowd until he stood directly in front of Trevor Sterling. Trevor Sterling. Trevor turned, his face still pale from Douglas's revelations. "Yes. You've been served." Marcus handed him the folder, then walked out. Simple, professional, efficient. Trevor opened the folder with shaking hands. His face went from pale to gray. Melissa pushed through the crowd. "What is that, Trevor? What is that?" He didn't answer, just stared at the documents. Melissa grabbed the folder from his hands and started reading. Douglas texted me, "She just found the amount, $650,000. Second mortgage." Her voice cut through the crowd like a knife. "What second mortgage?" She kept reading, flipping pages frantically. "You mortgaged my father's house. You took out a $650,000 mortgage on my father's house." "Melissa, I can explain. We're in foreclosure." Melissa screamed. 30 days. We have 30 days before they take the house." William Bradford's voice cut through. "Sterling, whose signature is on those mortgage documents." The question hung in the air. Trevor didn't answer. Melissa looked down at the papers, flipped to the signature page. Her face went white. "This is my father's signature," she whispered. Then louder, "Trevor, what did you do?" Douglas texted, "She's figured it out. You forged my father's signature." Melissa's voice was raw. "On a $650,000 mortgage." "Melissa, please, not here." How many documents did you forge? How many times did you sign my father's name?" That's when Catherine Walsh walked in. She walked through the crowd like Moses parting the Red Sea, two King County Sheriff's deputies flanking her. She stopped directly in front of Trevor Sterling. "Trevor Sterling, I have a warrant for your arrest." The room went silent, completely, utterly silent. Trevor's voice was barely a whisper. "What?" Catherine's voice carried to every corner. "You're being charged with wire fraud, forgery, financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, and identity theft. You have the right to remain silent." Douglas was recording, now sending me live video. I watched Catherine read Trevor his Miranda rights, while 150 people stood frozen, phones out recording. "Wait," Trevor said, his voice rising in panic. "Wait, you don't understand. She knew Melissa knew about everything. She told me to do it." Melissa's face transformed from shock to rage. "You lying son of a bitch. You said your father was incompetent," Trevor shouted. "You said he'd never know. You said we deserved the business. I thought the signatures were real." Melissa screamed back. "You told me he'd signed everything. You showed me documents with his signature." Catherine stepped between them. "Mrs. Sterling, did you know your husband was forging your father's signature?" Melissa was sobbing now, mascara running down her face. "No, I swear I didn't know. He told me Dad had signed everything." "You believed your father signed documents making you his conservator while claiming he was mentally incompetent." He said Trevor told me that's how it worked, that Dad had to sign them before he lost capacity." Trevor lunged toward her. "Don't you dare. You knew exactly what was happening. You wanted the business. You wanted the house." One of the deputies grabbed Trevor's arm. The other moved forward with handcuffs. "No, please," Trevor said, his voice breaking. "Please, I have information. I can help you." The metallic click of handcuffs echoed through the silent room. Douglas's video showed Trevor's face the moment he realized it was over. "Melissa," Trevor called out as the deputies started leading him toward the door. Tell them you knew." But Melissa just stood there, the foreclosure notice clutched in her hands, tears streaming down her face. Catherine turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. This is an ongoing federal investigation. If anyone has relevant information, please contact the FBI's Seattle field office." She handed out business cards to several people, including William Bradford and Rebecca Hart. The deputies led Trevor toward the door. The crowd parted, phones out, recording his perp walk through the house. Through my father's house. Douglas's camera followed them. I watched Trevor's face, red, tear-stained, destroyed, as he was led out. The door closed behind them. For a moment, nobody moved. Then people started talking all at once. Whispering, shouting, pulling out phones. William Bradford walked up to Melissa, his face hard. "Consider our investment withdrawn, and I'll be consulting with my attorneys." Margaret Brown followed. "Same here. You're going to be hearing from our legal team." One by one, the investors and business partners who'd come to celebrate walked past Melissa, their faces ranging from anger to disgust to pity. Rebecca Hart from the Seattle Times approached. "Mrs. Sterling, would you like to make a statement?" Melissa just shook her head, clutching the foreclosure notice. The caterers started packing up. Guests filed out. Some threw sympathetic glances at Melissa. Most didn't look at her at all. Douglas sent me a final video at 10:47 p.m. It showed Melissa sitting alone on the staircase of my father's house, surrounded by the wreckage of everything she'd built on lies. The caterers worked around her, packing up untouched food, collecting dirty glasses, whispering. The party was over. Patricia Van Horn was the last guest to leave. As she passed Melissa on the stairs, she paused. You know, dear, your father was always such a good man. What a shame you didn't inherit that quality along with his business. The door closed behind her. By 11 p.m., Melissa sat alone in the empty house, surrounded by the ruins of everything she'd built on stolen foundations. Douglas called me one last time. Greg, it's over. Do you want me to? Should I talk to her? I thought about my daughter sitting in my father's house, her marriage destroyed, her business collapsed, her reputation in ruins. I thought about the 42 calls she'd made to me just hours ago. No, I said. Let her sit with what she's done. I hung up. Bernie looked at me. How do you feel? Tired, I said, and free. The first call came at 1:47 a.m. I was lying in bed in Camden, staring at the ceiling, sleep impossible. Bernie had gone to bed an hour ago, but I could hear him moving around downstairs. He couldn't sleep either. My phone lit up on the nightstand. Trevor Sterling, Melissa's husband. I let it ring through to voicemail. 2 minutes later, it rang again. Same name, same decision. By 2:15 a.m., Trevor had called 7 times. I finally picked up the phone and listened to the voicemails. The first one was calm, calculated. Trevor's voice trying to sound reasonable. Gregory, it's Trevor. I know you're angry, but this is all a misunderstanding. We need to talk rationally. There are ways we can resolve this that benefit everyone. Call me back. The second voicemail 10 minutes later had an edge to it. Gregory, I know about the Texas money, the oil rights. We can work something out. You drop the charges, we negotiate a settlement. Everyone walks away. By the fifth voicemail, the mask was slipping. You're going to destroy your own daughter. Melissa's going to prison because of you. Because you're too proud to admit that you signed those documents and just don't remember. Is that what you want? The seventh voicemail was pure rage. If you don't drop these charges, I'll tell them everything. I'll tell them Melissa planned it all. I'll tell them she knew exactly what I was doing. She'll go down too. Is that what you want? The eighth. Pick up the phone, goddammit. I sat there in the darkness, listening to Trevor Sterling's voice deteriorate from manipulation to threats to incoherent fury. Each voicemail was evidence of a man who'd finally realized he couldn't lie his way out. I deleted them all without responding. At 2:47 a.m., exactly 12 hours after the first call that had started this entire day, my phone rang again. Melissa Mobile. I stared at the screen. Watched it ring. Watched it go to voicemail. It rang again immediately. And again. And again. By 3 a.m., Melissa had called 9 times. I listened to the first voicemail. Her voice was nothing like Trevor's. No calculation. No threats. Just broken. Dad, please pick up. I know you're awake. I know you're listening. Please, I need to talk to you. Please. The second voicemail was worse. Dad, I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the forged signatures. Trevor showed me documents. He showed me your signature. He told me you'd signed everything. I believed him. I'm so stupid. She was crying, deep racking sobs that made her words almost unintelligible. The third voicemail. I should have visited you at Pinehurst. I should have come to see you. Trevor kept saying you were too confused, that it would upset you. And I believed him because it was easier than admitting I'd put my own father in a home. I was a coward. Fourth voicemail. Her voice hoarse now. Do you remember when I was 8 and I broke Mom's favorite vase? I was so scared to tell you. But you just hugged me and said accidents happen, and we'd fix it together. Can we fix this, Dad? Can we? Fifth voicemail. The house is in foreclosure. Trevor mortgaged it without telling me. $650,000. I don't even know what he did with the money. Crypto, he said. Investments that were going to make us millions. All gone. Your house. Dad's house. Grandpa's house. All gone. I listened to her voice break over and over again and felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity. Just that same cold clarity I'd felt since Douglas made his first comment. This was justice. This was consequence. Sixth voicemail, 3:17 a.m. Trevor's lawyer called. He's trying to make a deal. He says he'll testify against me. He says I knew about everything, that I planned it. It's not true. Dad, you have to believe me, it's not true. Seventh voicemail. But maybe it should be true. Maybe I deserve to go to prison. I put you in that place. I signed the papers. I took your business. Even if I didn't know about the forgeries, I still took everything from you. And I didn't even visit. Eighth voicemail, 3:31 a.m. I can hear Mom in my head. You know what she'd say? She'd say, Melissa Marie Callahan, what were you thinking? She'd be so ashamed of me. The ninth voicemail was just crying. No words, just my daughter sobbing into the phone for 45 seconds. I sat there in the darkness, phone in my hand, and thought about Caroline, about what she would say, about what she would want me to do. The phone rang again. Call number 25. I let it ring. 26, 27, 28. At 4:15 a.m., Bernie knocked softly on my door. Greg, you okay? Come in. He opened the door, backlit by the hallway light. Your phone's been ringing for hours. I know. Is it her? Yes. Bernie sat down on the edge of the bed. Are you going to answer? I don't know. We sat in silence. My phone lit up again. Call 29. What's she saying? Bernie asked. That she didn't know. That Trevor lied to her. That she's sorry. Do you believe her? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About Melissa sitting across from me at that attorney's office, Trevor's hand on her shoulder. About her face when she told me I'd be better off at Pinehurst. About 3 years of silence, the visits that never came. I believe she didn't know about the specific forgeries, I said slowly. I believe Trevor kept that from her. But I also believe she knew exactly what she was doing when she put me in that place. When she took my business. When she convinced me I was losing my mind. That's fair, Bernie said. The phone rang again. Call 30. I picked it up this time, not to answer, just to listen to the voicemail she was leaving in real time. Dad. Her voice was barely a whisper, now destroyed by hours of crying. Please tell them I didn't know about the signatures. Please, that's all I'm asking. Just tell them the truth, that Trevor forged them without telling me. I know I don't deserve anything from you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But please don't let me go to prison for something I didn't do. Please. The voicemail ended. Bernie looked at me. What are you going to do? I don't know, I said. And I meant it. The phone rang again. Call 31. I watched my daughter's name glow in the darkness, but the calls didn't stop at 30. If you've made it this far, leave a comment telling me how you'd handle seeing your child in this situation. Would you step in or let justice run its course? Quick reminder, portions of this narrative contain creative embellishments that may not reflect real events. You're welcome to stop watching if this doesn't resonate with you. By call 35, I'd listened to every voicemail. Bernie had gone downstairs around 4:30 a.m., giving me space. I sat alone in my room, phone in hand, listening to my daughter's voice deteriorate from desperate to destroyed. Call 31, 4:02 a.m. Dad, I know I don't deserve forgiveness. Putting you in that place, taking your business, not visiting. I was selfish and cruel. Call 32. Trevor made it so easy to believe. He had answers for everything. When I asked about your signatures, he showed me documents. I wanted to believe him because it meant I didn't have to feel guilty. Call 33, 4:17 a.m. But I should have felt guilty. I should have visited you. A good daughter would have. Mom would have. Call 34. You're the only one who can tell them the truth now. About the forgeries. You're the only one who knows I didn't know. Call 35, 4:23 a.m. I understand if you hate me. I hate myself. Someone who abandoned her father when he needed her most. Call 36. Do you remember teaching me to ride a bike? You ran beside me for hours holding the seat. And when you finally let go, I just kept riding. You gave me that confidence. And this is how I repaid you. Call 37, 4:35 a.m. I called the bank about the foreclosure. 30 days and the house is gone. Your house, where you married Mom, where I grew up, all gone. Call 38. I keep thinking about that vase I broke when I was 8. You said we'd fix it together. But this can't be fixed, can it? Call 39, 4:41 a.m. Trevor's being arraigned tomorrow. His lawyer says he's going to plead not guilty and make a deal. That deal will be me. Maybe prison is what I deserve. Call 40. I'm sitting in your study. I found one of your old notebooks. Your handwriting. This was your life. And we just erased it. Shatichatum. Call 41, 4:45 a.m. I'm so sorry, Dad, for all of it, for every choice I made, for every day I didn't visit. I'm sorry I wasn't the daughter Mom raised. Then came call 42. 4:47 a.m. I watched the phone ring, then listened to the voicemail as she left it. Her voice was barely audible, a whisper raw from hours of crying. Dad, I'm not asking you to save me. I'm not asking you to drop the charges or give me money. I just need you to tell them one thing. Tell them I didn't know about Trevor's forgeries. Tell them the truth that he showed me documents with your signature, and I believed they were real. That's all. Because if I'm going to prison, I need it to be for what I actually did, not for crimes I didn't know were happening. A long pause. I could hear her breathing, shaking. I'm sorry, Dad. I love you. I never stopped loving you. I just stopped showing it, and that's worse, isn't it? The voicemail ended. The phone didn't ring again. I sat there as first light began creeping through my window. 5:00 a.m. The Atlantic outside was turning from black to gray to blue. Bernie knocked softly and came in with 2 cups of coffee. 42, he said. 42, I confirmed. We drank in silence, watching the sun rise over Penobscot Bay. What are you going to do? Bernie finally asked. I thought about Melissa at 8 years old, laughing on my shoulders, about Caroline's voice. She'll always be our daughter Greg, about working 80 hours a week to put her through college. But I also thought about her eyes across that attorney's office table, about Pinehurst, the loneliness, the feeling of being discarded, about 3 years of silence, about how she'd never visited. I pulled up the voicemail from call 42 and listened again. This time I heard something different. Not manipulation, just terror. Real, genuine terror. And beneath it, regret. She didn't know about the forgeries, I said. Trevor manipulated her, showed her fake documents. She believed him because believing was easier than questioning. But she did choose to put you in that home, Bernie said quietly. Yes. That was her choice, and she has to live with that. But she shouldn't go to prison for Trevor's crimes. I walked to the window. The sun was fully up now, painting the bay in gold and pink. I spent 3 years being angry, 3 years thinking about justice and revenge. Last night I got that. I got to watch Trevor arrested in front of 150 people. I got justice. And now I have to decide if I want revenge too. If I want to watch my daughter go to prison for crimes her husband committed. Or if I want to tell the truth that she knew what she was doing when she put me in Pinehurst, but that she didn't forge those signatures. Bernie nodded. What does the truth do? The truth keeps her out of prison for forgery, but she'll still lose everything. The house is in foreclosure. The business is destroyed. Her reputation is gone. Her marriage is over. She'll have to face what she did without hiding behind Trevor's lies. And you're okay with that? I thought about Caroline. Justice doesn't have to mean destruction. It can mean consequences that fit the crime. Melissa chose to abandon me, but she didn't choose to forge my signature. That was Trevor. At 7:30 a.m., I made coffee and called Catherine Walsh. She answered immediately. Gregory, I've been expecting your call. Kate, I need you to tell the FBI something. I'm listening. Melissa didn't know about the forged signatures. Silence. Then, how can you be sure? Because I listened to 42 voicemails last night, and I heard the truth in her voice. She's guilty of many things, Kate, but not forgery. And what about the other charges? I'm not dropping charges against Trevor. He forged my signature. He stole $180,000 from my retirement fund. He mortgaged my house. He goes to prison. That's non-negotiable. And Melissa? Melissa made choices. She chose to put me in that home. She chose to take my business. She chose not to visit for 3 years. Those choices cost her everything, her marriage, her house, her reputation, her relationship with me. That's her punishment. But I won't let her go to prison for Trevor's forgeries. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. You're a better man than most, Greg. No. I'm just a father who knows the difference between justice and revenge. And I'm choosing justice. I'll call the FBI today. Thank you, Kate. After I hung up, I stood at the window for a long time watching Camden wake up. Watching the lobster boats head out. Bernie came and stood beside me. You did the right thing. I hope so. Now what? Now I have to tell my daughter. I didn't call back. I sent a text message at 8:15 a.m. My hands were steady as I typed. No anger, no hesitation, just clarity. Melissa, I listened to your messages. All 42 of them. I told my attorney that you didn't know about the forged signatures. You won't be criminally prosecuted for Trevor's fraud. The FBI understands that he manipulated you, that he showed you fake documents, and you believed they were real. But understand this. I'm not saving you from the consequences of your choices. You chose to believe Trevor over your own father. You chose to put me in that place. You chose not to visit not once in 6 months. Those were your decisions. Not Trevor's. Yours. Trevor will go to prison. Your company will fail. Your marriage is over. The house is in foreclosure. Those are the consequences of trusting the wrong person and abandoning the right one. When you're ready to take real responsibility, not just for what Trevor did, but for your part in abandoning me, then call me. Not before. I'm your father. I love you, but love doesn't mean saving you from the lessons you need to learn. Dad, I read it 3 times before sending. Made sure every word was true. Then I pressed send. Bernie was making breakfast downstairs. I could smell coffee and bacon. Normal life continuing while everything else changed. 30 minutes later, my phone buzzed. I understand. Thank you for believing me. I'm sorry. 3 sentences. Short. Simple. Not defensive. Not asking for more. Maybe she was learning. I stared at her name on my phone. My thumb hovered over the block contact button. It would be so easy. 1 tap and Melissa would be gone from my life completely. But I didn't press it. Blocking her would be final. Would be choosing to have no daughter at all, and I wasn't ready for that. Not yet. Instead, I put the phone down and went downstairs to have breakfast with Bernie. 6 months passed. I followed the news from Seattle through Catherine Walsh. Trevor's trial was swift. The forensic evidence was overwhelming. 8 years in federal prison for wire fraud, identity theft, forgery, and financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Melissa wasn't charged. The FBI investigation confirmed what I'd told them she hadn't known about the forgeries. Trevor had shown her fake documents, had convinced her I'd signed everything willingly. But the consequences came anyway. The divorce was finalized in 3 weeks. Melissa got nothing. Trevor had nothing left to give. The house went into foreclosure. Sterling Callahan Consulting Group filed for bankruptcy. Every client fled. Every investor demanded their money back. Catherine told me Melissa took a job at Starbucks. Barista, minimum wage plus tips. She'd moved into a studio apartment, $800 a month. No car. She took the bus to work. She's seeing a therapist, Catherine reported one afternoon. Twice a week, doctor. Whitaker says she's making progress, but it's slow. A lot of guilt to work through. How do you know all this? I asked. Professional curiosity. And maybe I feel a little sorry for her. I didn't ask Catherine to stop checking. Maybe I felt a little sorry for her too. Or maybe I just needed to know she was still alive. Life in Camden continued. My consulting practice grew. The Callahan Foundation awarded its first grants $50,000 to elder abuse prevention programs, $75,000 to small business development. Bernie and I hosted Thanksgiving for Nancy Emily Frank and a dozen others. I was happy. Genuinely happy. But there was a Melissa-shaped hole in that happiness that no amount of lobster rolls or sunset views could fill. The text came on a Tuesday evening in late August, 6 months after that morning when I'd sent my message. Dad, I don't expect you to respond. I just need to say this. I have a job at a coffee shop. I'm in therapy twice a week. I'm learning to take responsibility for my choices. You were right. I chose to believe easy lies instead of facing hard questions. I chose comfort over truth. I chose to abandon you when you needed me most. No amount of saying Trevor manipulated me changes that truth. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking for forgiveness yet. I just want you to know I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your daughter again. I think about you every day. I think about Mom and what she'd say. I think about that vase I broke when I was 8 and how you said we'd fix it together. I don't know if this can be fixed, but I'm trying. I love you. I'm sorry. Melissa. I read it sitting on my porch watching the August sunset paint Penobscot Bay in shades of orange and gold. Bernie was inside reading. The evening was warm and peaceful. I read the message 5 times. This was different from the desperate voicemails, different from the terrified calls. This was measured, thoughtful, taking responsibility without making excuses. I'm trying to become someone worthy of being your daughter again. That sentence broke something open in my chest. I didn't respond immediately. Spent 3 days thinking about it, about what I wanted to say, about what Caroline would want me to say, about what kind of father I wanted to be. Finally, on Friday evening, I typed a response. Melissa, the fact that you're not asking for anything tells me you're finally beginning to understand. I'm proud of you for working, for going to therapy, for taking responsibility. Those are hard things to do. Most people can't do them. Forgiveness isn't a moment. It's a process. We're at the beginning of that process now. When you're ready, come visit me in Camden. We'll talk. Really talk. No lies. No excuses. Just truth. I love you. I never stopped. Dad, I pressed send before I could second-guess myself. Her response came 2 minutes later. Thank you. I'll come when I'm ready. I promise. I sat there on the porch as darkness fell over Camden phone in my hand, feeling something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Hope. Not the naive hope that everything would be magically fixed, but the cautious, hard-earned hope that maybe someday my daughter and I could find our way back to each other. Not as we were before. We could never be that again. But as something new. Something built on truth instead of comfort. On responsibility instead of excuses. On earned forgiveness instead of automatic love. Bernie came out onto the porch with 2 beers. She texted, he asked. Yeah. What did she say? That she's trying. Bernie handed me a beer and sat down. What did you say? That when she's ready, she can come visit. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars come out over the Atlantic. You think she will? Bernie asked. Come visit? I don't know, I said honestly. But I left the door open. That's all you can do, Bernie said. The door was open. What Melissa chose to do with that was up to her. 1 year after the grand opening party, Melissa knocked on my door. It was a spring morning in Camden, the kind where the Atlantic sparkled blue under a cloudless sky. I was on the porch with my coffee when I saw the car pull up an old Honda Civic 10 years past. Its prime paint faded on one side. Melissa stepped out slowly, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to be here. She looked different. Thinner. Older. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a plain sweater. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail. No jewelry except a watch. No makeup. She looked tired, but she also looked real. She stood by the car for a moment, gathering courage. Then she saw me on the porch and raised her hand in a tentative wave. I set down my coffee and stood up. Bernie appeared in the doorway behind me. He'd known she was coming. I'd told him when she texted last week. He crossed his arms, his face unreadable. You want me to stay or go? Bernie asked quietly. Stay. If she's serious about rebuilding, she needs to meet the people who matter to me. Melissa walked up the path slowly. When she reached the porch steps, she stopped. Hi, Dad. Hi, Melissa. Bernie stepped forward, extending his hand. Bernard Jacobs. Most people call me Bernie. You must be Melissa. She took his hand, surprised. Yes. Dad's told me about you. Probably. I'm the one who got him out of that place you put him in. Bernie's voice wasn't cruel, just matter of fact. I'm the one who drove him across the country when he had nowhere else to go. Melissa's face crumpled. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Bernie studied her, then nodded. You're here now. That counts for something. I'll make more coffee. He disappeared inside, leaving us alone. He hates me, Melissa whispered. No. But he won't forget what you did. Neither will I. That's the price of being forgiven, people remember. They just choose not to hold it against you anymore. I gestured to the chairs. Sit. Let's talk out here. The view's better. We sat side by side, looking out at Penobscot Bay. Bernie brought coffee, plain black, no pretense. Just two people and the truth between them. Thank you for letting me come, Melissa said quietly. Thank you for asking instead of assuming you were welcome. She flinched but nodded. I deserved that. We drank coffee in silence. A lobster boat chugged past. Gulls circled overhead. You look good, Dad. Healthy. Happy. I am. Camden gave me that, after you and Trevor took everything I had to build a new life from scratch. Turns out that life is better than the one I lost. She nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. I can see it in your face. You're at peace. Most days, yes. I wish I could say the same. I looked at her properly, saw the dark circles under her eyes, the way her hands trembled slightly around her coffee cup. Are you still in therapy? Twice a week. Dr. Martinez says I have a long way to go, that I spent so many years choosing comfort over truth that I don't know how to recognize truth anymore. Do you agree? Yes. Melissa set down her cup. Dad, I need to say this. I chose my comfort over your dignity. I chose to believe Trevor's lies because they made my life easier. I chose not to visit you because it would have forced me to admit what I'd done. Every choice was about protecting myself from guilt. I know. And I can't undo any of it. I can't give you back those 6 months at Pinehurst. I can't give you back 3 years of silence. No, you can't. She sobbed once, then caught herself. So what do? You acknowledge it. You take responsibility. You try to be better. And you accept that some things stay broken. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Can you forgive me, Dad? I thought about it. Really thought about it. About the anger I'd carried for 3 years. About the justice when Trevor was arrested. About the slow, painful process of letting go. I'm trying. Some days are easier than others. But Melissa, my forgiveness isn't the most important thing. Have you forgiven yourself? She looked at me, startled. No. How could I? Then start there. Because until you can accept what you did not excuse it, accept it, my forgiveness won't mean anything. We sat in silence for a long time. Around noon, Bernie suggested we walk into town for lunch. Frank's restaurant, he said. We walked the 6 blocks to the lighthouse, Melissa quiet beside me. People waved as we passed. Morning, Greg. Good to see you, Gregory. They all know you, Melissa said softly. It's a small town. I've lived here almost 2 years now, helped some of them save their businesses. They're my friends. At Frank's restaurant, the owner himself came out. Gregory, and this must be your daughter, Melissa Wright. Melissa looked terrified. He has, Frank's face softened. He's told us everyone makes mistakes, and everyone deserves a chance to make things right. Welcome to Camden. Over lunch, Melissa watched me interact with Frank, with Nancy, who stopped by with Emily, who brought pastries. She watched the community I'd built, the life I'd created. Everything she'd destroyed in Seattle, I'd rebuilt better in Maine. You're happy here, she said as we walked back. It wasn't a question. Yes. I took that from you, your first life, and you had to build this one from nothing. Not nothing, from $847 and the help of a stranger. I glanced at her. But yes, you took one life. I built another. Maybe a better one. Back at the house before she left, I handed her an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a check for $50,000. She stared at it, then at me. Dad, I can't. It's for school, for a business degree. You threw away your MBA by using it to steal. Try again. Do it right this time. I don't deserve, no you don't, but I'm giving it to you anyway. Not because you've earned it, but because you're my daughter, and I want you to have a chance to build something real. Don't waste this second chance. You won't get a third. She was crying, clutching the envelope. Thank you. One more thing. The oil money, the $3.8 million, when I die, it's going to charity. The Callahan Foundation, Elder Abuse Prevention, and Small Business Development. You'll inherit enough to be comfortable, but not enough to be lazy. You need to build your own life, not inherit mine. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. That's fair. That's more than fair. Good. She hugged me, then sudden and fierce. I hugged her back, feeling how thin she'd gotten. I love you, Dad. I'm so sorry for everything. I love you too. Now go. Build something. Be someone Mom would be proud of. I will. I promise. She drove away in her old Honda, the check in her purse, her face set with determination. I watched until the car disappeared around the bend. Bernie came and stood beside me on the porch. You think she'll make it? He asked. I don't know. But I gave her the tools. What she builds with them is up to her. Bernie handed me a beer. You did good today, friend. We sat on the porch, watching the sun set over Penobscot Bay, the sky painted in shades of orange and pink that never got old. The air was cool, carrying the salt smell of the ocean and the faint scent of wood smoke from someone's fireplace down the street. Inside, I could hear the radio playing softly, some old jazz station Bernie liked, Miles Davis or Coltrane. You think she'll make it? I asked. Bernie took a long drink before answering, his weathered face thoughtful in the fading light. I think she'll try, and that's all you can ask for. I nodded, watching a lobster boat chug back toward harbor, its day's work done. The lighthouse at the harbor entrance was just beginning its evening sweep, the beam cutting through the gathering dusk. 3 years ago, I said, I lost everything. My house, my business, my dignity. My daughter put me in a nursing home and walked away. I remember, Bernie said quietly. I remember the day I met you, sitting in that common room, staring at nothing. You looked like a man who'd already died, but forgot to lie down. That's how I felt. But you weren't dead. You were just waiting for someone to remind you that you were alive. I smiled at that. 2 years ago, a stranger walked into Pinehurst looking for his friend Jimmy. Found me instead. Told me I didn't belong there. Drove me 3,000 miles to a town I'd never heard of. Gave me a place to sleep and a reason to keep going. Best decision I ever made, Bernie said. House was too quiet before you showed up. Dorothy would have liked you. I wish I could have met her. She would have told you what I'm about to tell you, that sometimes we have to lose everything to find out what we're really made of. And you, my friend, are made of stronger stuff than you ever knew. 1 year ago, I continued, I found out my father had left me $3.8 million. Money I never knew existed, money that could have saved me from everything that happened. From Pinehurst, from the humiliation, from all of it. But didn't, Bernie added. And maybe that's the point. Maybe you needed to lose everything first. Needed to know you could survive without it. My father was a smart man, He knew something I didn't, that the money wouldn't have meant anything if I hadn't earned the wisdom to use it right. Bernie raised his beer in salute. To your old man. He played the long game. To Dad. I agreed, clinking my bottle against his. 6 months ago, I'd gotten justice. Not revenge justice. I'd watched Trevor arrested in front of 150 people, watched the empire built on forged signatures collapse in real time. Watched my daughter's world fall apart because she'd chosen comfort over truth, easy lies over hard questions. And today, I'd watched her try to put the pieces back together. Watched her sit on this same porch, drinking coffee, taking responsibility for her choices. Watched her cry, not with self-pity, but with genuine remorse. I thought losing everything would destroy me, I said. But it freed me instead. Freed me from thinking I needed a big house to be successful. Freed me from thinking my worth was tied to my business. Freed me from thinking love meant accepting whatever treatment people gave me. Bernie nodded slowly. You gave her justice without vengeance, truth without cruelty, consequences without abandonment. That's real love, Greg. The kind that hurts like hell but heals in the end. The kind most people can't do because it requires strength they don't have. My phone buzzed on the table between us. A text from Melissa. Made it home safe. Thank you for today. For everything. I'll make you proud, Dad. I promise. M. I showed Bernie the message. He read it and smiled, the lines around his eyes deepening. See, she's trying. That's more than most people do when they screw up. Most people just make excuses and blame everyone else. I typed back a simple response, drive safe. Talk soon. Love you. No declarations. No grand promises. Just the steady, quiet rebuilding of something that had been shattered into 1,000 pieces. The real inheritance, I said, staring out at the darkening bay, wasn't the $3, 8 million. It was learning that I could exist without the things I thought defined me. The house my father bought, the business I built from nothing, even the daughter who took them both. And what defines you now? I thought about it. Really thought about it. This. The work I do helping Emily keep her bakery open. The grants the Callahan Foundation gives to people who've been abused by their own families. The morning coffee with Nancy. The poker games with you and Frank. The fact that I can sleep at night without wondering if someone's forging my signature. That's a good life, Bernie said. It's a better life than the one I had before. Smaller in some ways, but bigger in the ways that matter. Bernie raised his beer again. To second chances. To second chances, I echoed. The ones we give and the ones we earn. We sat in comfortable silence as darkness settled over Camden like a blanket. The lighthouse beam swept across the water in its steady, predictable rhythm, 15 seconds between each pass. I'd timed it once during those early days when I couldn't sleep, when I'd sit out here counting anything that could be counted just to quiet my mind. Now I didn't need to count. The rhythm was just part of the night, like the sound of the waves or Bernie's breathing beside me. Somewhere down the street, I heard Nancy laughing with her book club guests. Tomorrow morning, I'd see her at the reading nook for our usual coffee. She'd have read something new and interesting, would want to discuss it. Emily would probably stop by with fresh cinnamon rolls still warm from the bakery. Frank might call about adjusting his menu for the winter season. Normal life. Good life. My life. What's on your schedule tomorrow? Bernie asked, as if reading my mind. Coffee with Nancy at 8. Consulting meeting with Emily at 10 about her expansion plans. She's thinking of adding a catering service. Lunch with you, poker night at Frank's. Sounds perfect. It is, I agreed. Simple. Good. mine. Nobody can take it away because it's not built on money or property or things people can steal. It's built on relationships, on trust, on showing up and doing good work. I thought about Melissa driving back to Seattle in her old Honda, the $50,000 check in her purse, her future uncertain, but finally pointed in the right direction. She had years of hard work ahead, years of therapy appointments and difficult conversations with herself, years of rebuilding a reputation she'd destroyed, of learning to live with what she'd done. But she'd taken the first step, honesty. She'd looked me in the eye and said, "I chose comfort over truth. I chose to abandon you." No excuses. No blaming Trevor for everything. Just raw, painful honesty. And I'd be here supporting from a distance, but never again sacrificing my peace for her chaos. Never again letting her need become my emergency. She was an adult, and adults had to face consequences. Catherine had called earlier after Melissa left. "You taught her the hardest lesson, consequences. And the most important one, unconditional love, has boundaries." "I just did what felt right," I'd told her. "That's what makes it powerful. You didn't follow some script or try to be vindictive. You just loved her enough to let her fail, to let her face the full weight of what she'd done." Most parents can't do that. Most parents didn't spend 6 months in a nursing home because their kid put them there. True. But you had every right to cut her off completely, to tell the FBI she knew about everything and let her go to prison. You chose a harder path, justice with mercy. That takes a bigger person than most of us are. I hadn't known what to say to that, so I just thanked her and hung up. Stars began appearing over Camden one by one like tiny promises in the darkness. The lighthouse swept its beam across the water, 15 seconds like clockwork. Inside the house, warmth and books and the promise of leftover lobster rolls for a late-night snack waited. My phone sat silent on the table beside me. No more 42 desperate calls in the night. No more voicemails full of tears and excuses and manipulation. Just occasional messages from a daughter learning to stand on her own. Learning that her father's love didn't mean he'd save her from herself. "You know what the best part is?" I asked Bernie. "What's that?" "I'm happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Not in spite of everything that happened, but because of it. Losing everything taught me what actually mattered. Losing my house taught me the difference between a house and a home. Losing my business taught me the difference between making money and making a difference. Losing my daughter taught me the difference between love and enabling. That's wisdom, friend. The expensive kind. The kind you can't buy." I agreed. "The kind you have to earn through pain and loss and rebuilding." We finished our beers as the last light faded from the sky. Tomorrow would bring coffee and consulting and poker. Next week would bring new clients and foundation grants, and maybe another text from Melissa. Next month, next year, who knew? But tonight I had everything I needed. I'd lost a house, a business, a daughter who took me for granted. I'd found a home, a purpose, and maybe a daughter who finally understood what mattered. I'd taught Melissa about consequences and boundaries. But she taught me something too, that love doesn't mean enabling. That forgiveness is a process, not a moment. That sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is letting them face the truth about themselves, no matter how painful that truth might be. That night, for the first time in 3 years, I went to bed without checking my phone obsessively, without wondering if Melissa would call, without carrying the weight of what she'd done like a stone in my chest. I set the phone on my nightstand face down and turned off the light. The silence was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. Outside my window, the Atlantic whispered against the rocky shore in its eternal rhythm. Inside my home, not anyone else's peace, settled over everything like a warm blanket on a cold night. I'd survived the betrayal. I'd gotten justice. I'd chosen forgiveness without forgetting. I'd set boundaries without abandoning. And now, finally, I could rest. The phone stayed silent through the night. No desperate calls. No voicemails full of tears and panic. Just peaceful, blessed silence. And that silence sang like freedom, like the sound of a man who'd lost everything and found himself in the ruins. Like the sound of a father who'd loved his daughter enough to let her fall so she could learn to stand on her own. Like the sound of peace, hard-earned and precious, finally coming home to stay. Looking back at my family story, I see a man who almost let betrayal define him. Don't be like I was. Don't wait until you've lost everything to learn what matters. Here's what 3 years taught me: dad revenge isn't about destruction. Real dad revenge is rebuilding yourself so well that those who betrayed you see what they threw away. The ultimate dad revenge is living so fully that their chaos can't touch your peace. My family story became a lesson in boundaries. I learned that loving someone doesn't mean accepting abuse, that forgiveness doesn't require forgetting, that you can open the door to reconciliation without letting dysfunction back into your home. If this family story teaches you anything, let it be this: material success means nothing if you lose yourself gaining it. Your worth isn't your house, your business, or even your relationships. It's who you are when everything is stripped away. God has a strange way of teaching us. Sometimes He lets us lose everything to show us what we truly have. I lost a house and found a home, lost a business and found a purpose, lost a daughter and maybe, just maybe, found her again, but different, better, real. Don't ignore the red flags. Don't choose comfort over truth. Don't sacrifice your dignity for someone else's greed. And if you do make those mistakes, learn from them. Take responsibility. Rebuild. Thank you for walking this journey with me to the end. I'd love to hear your perspective. Leave a comment, sharing what you would do if you found yourself in Gregory's situation. If this story resonated with you, consider subscribing so you won't miss future stories. A gentle reminder: while inspired by real themes of elder abuse and family betrayal, certain elements have been dramatized for storytelling purposes. If this content isn't your preference, feel free to explore other videos that might suit you better.